Capitola Black Recordings presents an unabridged recording of The Lost Jewel by Charlotte Marie Tucker, or A Lady of England. Chapter 3. Night Thoughts. It was some moments before Maurice realized where he was, his little room being in perfect darkness. The distant rumble of wheels, however, instead of the soft murmur of the cascade which had so often lulled him to sleep in his childhood, soon restored him to full recollection. The heat felt stifling and oppressive. Maurice rose, groped his way to the window, flung back the shutters, and threw up the sash. He gazed forth into the night. Maurice looked no longer as he had looked 2 evenings before on the velvet lawn dotted with flower beds which his mother had loved to tend, the little cascade dancing over the rocks beyond, and the wooded hill which rose behind where the nightingale was pouring forth her exquisite song. The full moon was shining over a range of mews, lighting up slate roofs and brick chimneys where not a single leaf of green refreshed the weary gaze. Maurice unconsciously sighed and looked upward to the sky. Never had the heavenly orb there appeared more lovely to his eye than it did now, when it and the light clouds which it silvered were the only objects on which that eye could admiringly rest. That moon was now shining on his old home. It was the only thing to remind him of that home. Scenes changed, circumstances alter, but the sky and the lights which God placed there are above us wherever we go. And I am indeed in London, in that great wonderful city which I have so often longed to visit, and in which I now feel so desolate and lonely. Such were the reflections of that orphan, and he stood leaning his arm on the sill of his attic window. What a strange dream I have had! It seems so real, and all that has passed during the last month so much like a dream. Oh, that I could only wake and find that I had been sleeping all this while! Maurice sighed heavily, and perhaps to divert his thoughts from their painful channel, turned them again upon his dream. To have a soul, and a soul in danger, that is not a fancy but reality. That is, I suppose, the case of every human being upon earth. And what enemies are they who seek to get from us our priceless jewel, who would win it only to destroy it? Words came into the mind of the boy, familiar to his ear as often pronounced by his father's voice, though perhaps their full meaning was scarcely understood by Maurice. The word, the flesh, and the devil. These are the enemies of the soul. It is against these that the treasure must be guarded. Maurice's fancy flowed on, forming an allegory from his dream, as a reflection in clear water answers the object which it mirrors. Yes, poor as I am, and so little cared for by the world, that were I to die tonight, no one would weep for me here, no one would even miss me. I am the possessor of a jewel much more precious than that which my cousin wears. Does my uncle prize the Atma because his brother lost his life saving it? Maurice clasped his hands and looked fixedly into the sky, as he thought what a price had been given for his own immortal soul. But who will care for it here? The boy instinctively felt that his position in the house of his uncle would be one of temptation and trial. Even one evening had shown Maurice that Sir John was very different in many ways from what the orphan's parents had been, that his ideas, his language, his habits were altogether unlike those of the Devonshire pastor and his wife. The moon, which had for some seconds been hidden by passing clouds, now shone out again in calm, pure luster. Her gentle beam seemed to speak a message of peace to the orphan's heart. Could not the same hand that guided the radiant orb guide the course of the fatherless boy, guard his soul from the perils that might beset it, keep it safe in the hour of temptation? Without closing the window, Maurice, with noiseless step, returned to his pillow, but before closing his eyes, commended himself to the care of his God. Keep me, O keep me, King of kings, under thine own almighty wings, was his last thought ere he sank to that calm, dreamless rest which exhausted nature required. A more experienced mind than that of Maurice might have traced farther the allegory of his dream, might have more clearly recognized in its visionary forms corrupting pleasure, sensual indulgence, and the love of gold, which is the root of all evil. Then in the fierce fire which enveloped the ship might have been seen the wrath of an offended God, the fearful flame of his justice, from which there is only one way of escape, but a way which is open to all. It might be that the whole life of Maurice was to prove a commentary upon his dream. That is, it foreshadowed forth all the great realities which concern the undying soul, not of the orphan alone, but of every reader who glances at these pages. A slight fiction may convey a deep truth, as the air, unable in its weakness to support the most fragile feather, yet bears in its trembling vibrations to the ear the peal from the thunder cloud above. Thank you for listening to Capitola Black Recordings. I hope you have enjoyed this recording of The Lost Jewel by Charlotte Marie Tucker.